do this.
This is the Social Factor.
Welcome back to the Social Factor.
Hello! How mysterious do we sound?
Last week we finished up with Russia, finally.
Oh, part 3.
Biggest country in the entire world.
Yep. Biggest problems in the entire world.
Yeah, that was the first topic that it took 3 episodes to do.
Yeah, but I think Russia deserves to be properly represented just because it is
2 hours
of its influence on the world and all the other stuff.
Basically 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Nice.
For the 3 episode total is what we do each 45-minute episodes, That's 2 hours and 15 minutes.
People
total.
tell me I talk a lot.
Oh, it's fine.
I know.
I know I didn't post the topic of what we're doing today. The topic that we are doing today is going to be, we're going to be doing Japan.
Konbanwa! Means good morning.
Now, I know that Japan is significantly smaller than Russia.
Oh, by many, many miles.
Yeah, Japan is, rather, probably just a bit bigger than, it's probably about like maybe 2 or 3 of Koreas, north and
I would
south.
say 2 Koreas, maybe.
Yeah,
2, because
roughly there.
It's really, if you really look at it, its location to China and just how it's designed, it's marginally an island.
Exactly. It quite literally. I think is it Japan or is it China that borders North Korea? I forget which one. China. Okay.
But Japan is
it's also
right on the outside of both.
Yeah, and Japan, I believe, borders China, doesn't it?
Well, it's facing China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, now.
And that plays a key role in its development.
Yeah.
And we talk about it in here as we go.
So we're going to talk about the history of Japan, and usually, if, like, for instance, let's just be honest here, we're not going to fit every single country in one season, Well,
I think we need to look at key nations.
Exactly. So like how we did North and South Korea, we put them in the same episode because they both share relatively the same history,
Until 1949.
Exactly. Where they both split up into two different, because they got the war and
under Eastern European influence.
Exactly, and they're like, no, I want power. No, I want power. Okay, we're gonna have our 2 different countries.
Well, it doesn't help when one country, one section of the same nation invades the other. You know what I mean? It was really a civil war like the United States had.
Exactly.
Only this time the North was the bad guy.
Yeah. So being that Japan is so small, we're gonna try to get. We're gonna try to get all the history in one episode. There's no way we're going over 45 minutes with this history.
We should be able to finish it maybe in time.
It's small enough. However, my point being is that if we get done with Japan early and we have enough time to fit another country that is in relation to Russia, to Russia, Japan.
Yeah, it would be an introduction.
Then basically we would, if we have enough time to cover the history on that country, then we would do that, and then we'd be the histories of Japan and whatever. If we cannot, then we're just going to close it out there with Japan, because we're not going to do an episode that's titled, for the topic World History. Japan and
Introduction to Taiwan.
Another country part 2, being that, hey, we cover all of this for Japan and then half of this country's history,
or even a minute amount of the next country, which deserves a lot more.
Exactly. So that's basically what I'm saying with that.
Awesome.
All right. So now that you see the point. I'm not going to repeat myself because I intend to do that, as David had said.
Well, it's a good observation.
So you get the point of what we just said. So, we are going to discuss the ancient, the history of Japan, the ancient history of Japan.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out this interesting topic first about Japan. Now, it is believed that human beings have inhabited Japan for at least 30,000 years. The one thing that, the one thing of few things that David and I disagree on is that I believe in the biblical sense of the history of the Earth, and David believes in the sense that the Earth has been around for billions of years.
Scientific approach.
Exactly. I believe that it's only been around for 2,000 plus years. You know.
Well, and again, we had this discussion. If that's 2,000 some years, then you're talking about the Christian calendar versus the Hebrew calendar, which is over 5,000 some years.
Exactly. And David, like I said, believes in the other one. I just don't personally believe that. I don't understand how everything on Earth could have sustained itself for that long of time.
Well, if that's the case, then the human race doesn't have very long.
So anyway, so that's the opening. That's the opening fact, right? Or opening fact, I guess.
An ideology.
Opening ideology is that Japan has been inhabited for at least 30,000 years by,
or just by 2,000 years, according to Josh.
Exactly. And actually, during the last ice age, Japan was connected to mainland Asia.
Okay, let's talk about that.
It was by a land bridge. And the hunters from the Stone Age were able to walk across it. And
do you have an idea of how long ago the Stone Age appeared?
No idea.
We're talking nearly 40,000 years ago.
Okay.
And the Ice Age, now mind you, the last Ice Age actually ended in the late 1800s.
Okay.
But, or actually early 1800s, late 1700s. But the Ice Age we're talking about was over 100,000 years ago.
So basically, Japan started and was formed during the Ice Age
because of the migration.
Yeah,
over the
and then when the Ice Age ended around 10,000 BC, Japan became a group of islands became known as Japan.
Yep.
To sum it up.
Yep.
Do you want to continue, or do you want me to? Or
well, you kind of took the glory away from me. No, it's okay. No, actually, I think you're doing a fine job. I mean, if you want to just take over today, and if there's anything that I'm aware of that might, be a discussion worth, then welcome to running the show.
Yeah, see, when it comes to history, David knows a lot more about history than I do, and he has a lot more interest in history than I do. Like, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show was because in school, I've said this before, but in your public school or whatever in American education, I learned very little about history because they never made it interesting. It was all textbook crap.
Correct. Yeah.
It was just, hey, read this. They never made it interesting.
And then be tested on that information.
Exactly. It's just like, here, have this textbook, read this, and then be tested on that crap that's in there.
Exactly.
When I met David is so into history and so knowledgeable about it that when you bring up history to him, he goes on and on about it. I learned so much about history from him.
Oh, I'm so flattered.
He makes it fun, and that's why I wanted to do this show, because he makes it fun for me to learn about history. And so
that's a true compliment. I really appreciate that.
So that's why he does a lot of the talking in this season. That's why he's done a lot of the talking so far in this season, because I learn better when he's explaining it rather than reading a textbook about it.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that might be because you're more audio person that learns from verbality.
Yeah.
Which I just made that up, but it sounded good. And there are people that love to read, and they learn from it. And I'm like you. If I listen and debate, that's how I learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so healthy for you to use that part
and that's
of your brain.
how I learn too. Yeah. With I asking questions and then he'll if you have one question about history, David can talk for like an hour for hours about an answer to that question.
True. As long as I know that information. Now, if
Yes.
I don't know it, I will tell you straight up. This is what I know, this is what I don't know, let's look it up together, or you look it up in your own time, and when we see each other again, let's talk about it.
Exactly.
Like, this is how the show really was created, if you think about it.
Exactly, that is how the show was created. And the show was originally created in a... Well, you know, we'll touch that some other time.
Another day.
Because we could end up talking the whole show about that, and this is supposed to be about Japanese history.
Sorry, Japan, the rising sun, we love you.
Okay, so it was... Japan learned to make things out of pottery at around 8,000 BC. Now, there's like a it's like in a different language what BC actually stands for. There's like two different things. It means before Christ, and there's also one other thing that the BC stands for.
Before the Common Era.
Before
BCE,
the Common Era.
You know.
Yeah.
BCE meaning before the Common Era, and BC standing for...
but there was also one...
AD?
No.
Adium?
I'm not sure. Before Christ... that was AD. Okay, BC, so it was AD that I was thinking of.
But the thing is AD actually is what talks about Christ. BC is prior to the existence of
Exactly.
Christ. And that's, again, we're talking more of a religious aspect versus a historical or scientific one. Now, in science, modern science has BC as after the Common Era, and BCE before the Common Era. Okay.
So, I have no idea what this word means.
Go ahead.
But between the era of 8,000 BC and 300 BC, now we're going... Basically, the number decreases in BC. It doesn't go up. It decreases, and it goes to 0 BC, and then we start 80.
Correct.
We are in 80 right now, but we just don't use 80 anymore.
Well, we do actually, but as I said, AD is actually a Latin translation. And look it up one time. Look up AD and BC, and they'll give you the Latin version, which the Roman Empire used.
Well, we get to AD down here, so I'll do it then. How about? So,
Another time, yeah.
like I said, the era between 8,000 BC and 300 BC is called Jomon, whatever that means.
Jumji.
No, Jomon.
Oh, Jomon, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was...
And basically it means... I just found what it means. It was right after it.
Right there.
So Jomon means cord marked, and it's because the people marked their pottery by wrapping a cord around it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So so pottery was basically a big thing in Japan between 8,000 and 3,000, and it's called Jomon because, you know, like I said, it was a big thing, and they wrapped a cord around their pottery, you know. And these people, being the Jomon people, they
cord people.
Yeah, they live by hunting. You know, hunting fish, collecting shellfish, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Can't say deer because I don't know if deer were around at that time.
Well, because it was an island,
probably
there
not.
was very, very little like what we're wildlife that we're accustomed to.
Exactly, and the more they killed, the more easily they could have ran out of food because literally their food has to spawn offspring.
Correct.
They can't just come over through sea.
Fishing was the largest kind of feeding ground for the Japanese culture and people.
Yeah.
Because even today, it's sushi. You know what I mean? You're looking
Sushi's
at
a
people,
big thing.
fishermen people, you know?
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's basically when, back then, I mean, you had to be careful not to kill everything.
Or you're just starving.
Exactly, you'd be shit out of luck and just eating seafood.
Well, you know, but they over the millennia they really got good at fish.
Exactly. So, yeah.
And dolphins.
Yeah.
Also.
They made tools out of stone, wood, and bone.
Yep.
Obviously from the things that they killed, you know, the bone. And they made clay figures of people and animals, and this was called dogu.
Yep.
So then between 300 BC and 380, so about 600 years there, and a new era had begun in Japan, and then they learned to start growing rice.
So the agricultural era started.
Pretty much, yeah. And they also learned to make tools of bronze and iron.
And that's known as the Bronze Age.
Yeah, the Bronze Age.
You know, it's funny, when looking at this, I'll say it real quickly because I know we're starting to lose time here.
Yep.
Is what happened, Japan was actually a little more developed than most other nations in the world.
Yeah.
They grew a lot faster because of the influence over China, but their eras were very similar when it kind of came to like certain eras, like the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and then so on and so forth.
Right.
So it's kind of funny to see this isolated island developing almost at the same rate as every other country.
Right.
But they were a little ahead of time.
Also, during the time period, they learned to weave cloth.
Yep.
So that period right there that I just described, that's called the Yayoi period.
Okay.
Yayoi, something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess it was just named after a village called Yayoiko.
Yep.
I guess.
Actually, yeah.
Don't know if the village still exists.
Yayoiko ends up becoming Kyoto.
Oh.
If I'm correct, because that's what I read about before.
Okay.
And
let's check this. Check our facts here.
Yeah. Well, and then there's Nana, which was the first capital.
Alright, hold on here. Just want to check this fact here. So apparently it's still called Yayoiko.
Okay, so it's not okay because I know at one point
all these links refer to it as Yayoiko.
Yayoki.
It's even this this thingy from literally it was posted yesterday on a website. It says rent from people in Yayoiko, Nakano, Japan.
Oh, Nakano, Japan. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I know there was what is known as Kyoto had a different name, like in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And that's why I was wondering if that's what it was.
There is a chance that we actually might be might have to do a part 2 of this.
Sure.
There is a chance because literally I just get through one sentence and we end up having like a 5-minute conversation on everything.
So I'll just shut up.
I just say one sentence. So anyway, like I said, the period called Yayoi, and it was named after a village. They named the period after a village in Japan called Yayoiko, and it was basically when things they started to farm and stuff like that, and it was a more settled lifestyle. These people, they lived in villages made of wood. They were huts made of wood, and because it was farming, farming began to become popular, and people gained other skills as well. Society started to become divided into classes. Yep.
Yeah, just pretty much like all the other tribes that developed.
Yeah. So the leaders of what they call the Yayoi society, they were buried in mounds that were away from normal, ordinary people's burial grounds. So basically, these people were thought of as higher up than normal people. The leaders of Yayoi.
Yeah.
They're leaders of a period.
Yep.
Awesome. So, now we're going to dive into the Kofun period of Japan. Now the Kofun period was between 300 AD and 710 AD. So this was 410 years, I believe my math is correct on that. Yeah, 410 years this was. And so during this period, Japan did gradually become united. So that's good.
So they had a little bit of war there for a little while, and then they ended up joining each other.
Yeah. However, the rich and powerful men were still buried in tombs.
Okay.
Special tombs. They were called Kofun.
Yeah.
Which is, but
the
Kofun period.
Probably the development of a more modernized version.
Exactly. So each of these periods were named after some sort of significant term from that period.
Well, but if you think about it, you look at Japanese culture, someone by that name started all this. So the Kofun was usually like a family that started all this, even though they don't talk about it that much.
I'm pretty sure surnames weren't even around back then. So
yes, they were.
They were.
Japanese had a very even in tribal setting, had a very structural.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're burying their royalties or the head of the tribes.
Yeah.
Like royalty. Okay. So by that saying that, and also having, I would bet money that all these different dynasties or eras, other than when you get to the Stone Age and stuff,
right,
was based on either the city that was named after someone. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Or something like an agricultural growth, because this one person started this that was named after them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, all right.
So, these people, these powerful and rich men were buried, in kofans. There were tombs, and these clay figures called Haniwa or Hanawa. They were placed on the tombs as a way to guard them. Mm-hmm. And China heavily influenced Japan during this time period.
Totally. I mean, China was already more developed than Japan.
Yeah.
So the influence from there was just, was Confucius and everything else. Yeah.
And then writing came to Japan from China in roughly about 400 AD.
Correct. And that is Confucian. Confucius monks would come over to.
Yep.
To there.
And the Chinese also taught Japanese how to make paper during that time period.
Okay, I didn't know that, but that's cool.
And they also learned to make.
He made it out of rice, didn't he?
I don't
didn't
know.
specify, because I know that in that
my
era,
research didn't specify.
Yeah,
No.
I know that Japan and China used a lot of rice paper.
Oh, okay.
Which was because that was their biggest stock in Japan. So they utilized uses, and part of it was the starch kept it together.
Okay. And then the Japanese, they also learned to make porcelain, silk, and lacquer. I don't know what lacquer is.
Isn't lacquer like a fluid that goes over certain material to keep it
I'm not sure. I'll have to
preserved?
Not sure. Let's look this up.
I would go under ancient lacquer.
Well, we'll see. It is a liquid.
Yeah, it's a liquid that preserves and keeps it protected from rain and stuff.
Yep, it's a protective coating.
Man, I'm good.
Oh yeah. Anyway, and then the Japanese, they also learned to plan cities in the Chinese way.
Okay. Just how
that means.
Meaning the buildings, the way they were built, the way they were structured, the governments were developed a certain way.
So basically, what that
they had ordinances and everything.
So basically, they learned a lot from Japan. Like China,
in a way,
heavily influenced.
China really increased the development of Japan by like eons, or at least millennia.
Okay.
Just because of the strong influence they had on them.
Okay.
That would change.
Now, during this time period, North and South Korea did not exist yet. It was just Korea, because the Korean War had not happened.
Oh, yeah. You can't even talk about that at that era.
Right.
There were still tribesmen back then.
Because the king of Korea, King Peichi?
Yeah,
Peichi?
Korean is very difficult.
Something like that.
Peichi, yeah.
He actually sent priests over to Japan in 552 AD to convert Japan to Buddhism.
So you tell me Korea or China?
Korea.
Are you sure?
Yep. Because my
So Korea was responsible for Japan turning
the king
Buddhist.
the king of Paichi in Korea sent priests to convert Japan to Buddhism.
Wow, that's like new information for me, because I thought it was China that had the strongest influence. Interesting.
No. Yeah. The Japanese, their native religion, they're Shinto.
Shinto,
yeah.
Yeah. Believe it or not,
it means the way of the gods.
But you know what though? There's a strong influence. Now I've researched that Shinto has a very strong influence from the Hebrews.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a ceremony that Shinto priests make, or monks, whatever they call them, and it's actually the story of Abraham and Isaac, the sacrifice to God.
Right.
And it's like, when I discovered, I'm like, how would they get a hold of a Hebrew ceremony? Okay, turned out there were rabbis before the Middle Ages that traveled to Japan, or it was during the Middle Ages, I think. And Shintoism is much younger than Buddhism. Okay, much younger by I think almost 800 years. All right, and so all of a sudden this particular Japanese belief system has this Jewish part to it, and I was like, where the heck did that come from?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were everywhere.
Yeah. So, if you want to know what Shinto basically is, it basically just teaches people. Their way of thinking was that spirits are pretty much present everywhere in nature.
Yeah. I should get involved in Shinto. That's actually exactly what I do.
Yeah. It was pretty much every natural phenomena, like mountains, lakes, trees, waterfalls, and rocks, has a spirit.
Which sounds funny because Native
I
Americans...
was going to say, it sounds silly.
Native Americans have the same philosophy.
Oh.
If we ever covered the Native American... Because I remember I studied Lakota spirituality for 2 years. And that was the one thing. Everything had, was a he, she, and it.
When you said that, that's what Native Americans kind of believe. It made me think of Pocahontas.
Yeah.
Mother Willow.
Yep. Everything.
Where she talked to a tree.
Grandfather Moon.
Yep.
Father, son, everything has an identity and a spirit.
Yep.
And you're talking about rocks. If you do the sweat lodge, and I don't want to veer off too much, but if you do the sweats, the rocks are the rock people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, very similar to Shinto.
So, but this religion, it no prophets, no sacred books or anything like that. The only thing is his teachings were passed on in myths. They have many ceremonies and festivals.
They do.
The two religions, Buddhism and Shinto, they both existed in Japan. The two of them, both Buddhism and Shinto. Because they had Shinto, but then Korea tried to bring Buddhism into there. So
it kind of shocked me that Korea had that influence over Japan.
So Shinto, it's more concerned with this life and its followers. Frequently pray for things they need here. Buddhism, it's more concerned with what happens after death.
And also a balance in life.
Yeah. And I mean, the Japanese were happy with practicing both religions. So.
And there was not a lot of warring or anything between the two religions either.
Well, exactly. Both existed peacefully. Both accepted each other's religion. And
yeah, you go your way, I'll go mine. That's how
right?
It was,
So, then, in the 7th century AD, 7th century, what time period would that be?
The 600s.
600, yeah. The Emperor of Japan, because Japan has an emperor, people have prime ministers, presidents, queens.
It was royalty.
Stuff like, basically stuff like that. Japan has an emperor. So the emperor became more powerful. Prince Shotoku, who lived from... I'm getting a date here, but I'm not sure if this is his reign period or if this is from when he lived. Must be probably from when he lived, because people, back in that time period, people did not live for that long, so...
exactly. On average, it was 30 years, so...
574 to 622. That had to have been his lifespan right there.
His reign, yeah.
Yeah, that had to have been his...
Yeah, and the thing, the emperor would be born into it, because they were considered gods.
Yeah.
And then they would die, and the next... Or if he had a child, would take over.
I just want to confirm that this was his lifespan right here. Not just assumed stuff,
Sure.
Alright, so... he was born in 574 AD, and he died in 622 AD. So that was, in fact, his lifespan.
Okay. He was actually in his 40s. Wait, it sounded 74 to 20, what was it, 26?
622.
22, okay, so he was in his 40s.
Yeah. So Prince Shotoku, in the 7th century, he ruled as regent to Empress Suiko.
Okay.
He was a patron of the arts and learning, and he brought forth scholars from China and both Korea and Japan, and he adopted the Chinese calendar.
I wonder how old that is. Which you can look up another time.
Wait, but how would he bring scholars from China? Oh wait, okay, that okay. Now I got confused for a second.
You got Confucius.
I got Confucius. I was reading something and then I'm like, but how is that? And then I'm like, oh wait, this and this, now it makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, Prince Shotoku adopted the Chinese calendar, so he had influence on China's calendar then.
No, actually, he adopted it, which means he took on their calendar.
Oh!
So China influenced even their time management.
Okay. So basically, he decided to use their form of
he adopted.
calendar.
He became the child of China.
So I mean, their nation was literally born off the ideas of Japan. I mean, of China. Yeah.
Their civilization grew under the influence of China.
Right. Yeah. Right. So clearly, China came before Japan.
Obviously. Yeah. Well, they say that China and India. India's, I believe, a little older than China, but for a civilization, we're not talking about how long the inhabitants were there.
Right.
We're just talking about once it actually became a civilization. India was actually more modern for the longest time than any other Asian country.
Okay.
Okay. But China then took off because of the amount of people they already had there.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean.
Yeah. The Horyuji Buddhist temple and monastery was built by Shotoku in 607.
So strong religious influence there.
Yep. Later in 670, it did burn to the ground. But then it was rebuilt, and it became a Buddhist learning center.
Okay. Wow, interesting.
This is now an interesting fact. Today, they're actually the world's oldest surviving wooden structures in Japan.
Well, and the Japanese are very perfectionist culture. They're all, I mean, from being a student to being a warrior to being a cook, they're just, when they make something happen, it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's usually by perfection.
Yeah. So after Shotoku, in 646, reforms were made, a series of them. They were called taika. They were called taika. And then from that point, all land in Japan was the emperor's.
Lovely.
Peasants at that time period, because we don't call people peasants no more. But,
yeah.
At that time, peasants they were to pay taxes to the emperor in goods like rice or cloth, or in labor by working on building sites or serving as soldiers.
Yep, that was very common throughout Asia.
Yep. And then 670 came, and a census was held to find out how many taxpayers there actually were.
It's amazing how an empire or a set of royal classes, because that's what they became, was able to use mathematics to benefit their kingdom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then Japan became a centralized and very highly civilized kingdom by about the late 7th century.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very efficient.
So then also at the time the capital of Japan was moved. An emperor died. It was moved when an emperor died.
Mm-hmm.
And people believed it was unlucky to stay in the same place afterwards.
Yeah. Now, based on the stuff I researched, wasn't one of the cities... Okay, there was 3 major capitals that came out of the history. And I believe one of them was Nana, was the first capital. Did you find that in your research?
No.
Okay. Because then came Nana, and then later on came Kyoto as a capital, and then Tokyo was the last one.
Yeah, Tokyo is currently. You said Nana?
Yeah, I think that's what it was called.
Are you sure it wasn't Nara?
Maybe. Hang on.
Because I have a Nara. I
yep,
researched
you are
Nara.
correct. See, I kept on seeing the end. Nara was the first Japanese capital.
Yeah, you said Nana, and then all of a sudden Nara hit me, and I'm just like,
yep, it's right
are
here.
you sure it wasn't that?
No, you're right. It was I misconstrued the one R as an N.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the first, the first in the 8th century. So
yeah,
you said it was centralized in the 7th century, but then they actually formed an actual capital in the 8th century.
Yep.
Nara was the first one.
We're right now we're basically talking about Nara. So like I said, it was unlucky to stay in the same place afterwards. So following the Chinese custom, Japan, they decided to make a permanent capital. So they built the city called Nara in 710.
Yep.
And they were actually divided into provinces at that time. Japan was.
Mm-hmm.
So the governor of each Japanese province in 713, they were ordered to write a report about their province. By
like the sheriff of Nottingham, that was their job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Pretty much.
They were sheriffs of their community.
Yep. So these reports they were to describe products of each of the provinces, as well as plants, animals, and other resources that they had. Yeah. Basically, the emperor was trying to keep track of okay, what do you have? All this stuff.
His coffers.
Oh yeah, it's a census.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah, it was like an inventory.
Emperor wanted a census of everything that Japan had.
Yep, and that included how many people were in each province.
Yep.
How many were sick? How many were healthy?
Yep.
Which is very modern if you think about it. We still do that today.
Oh yeah. We have a U.S. Census.
Yep.
Yep. Every year they send us a letter saying, "Hey, you're required to fill this out by law."
Yep.
Because we keep a census.
Otherwise, we consider you an alien.
Exactly. And whenever in the U.S., this has nothing to do with obviously the whatever. I have a point here. I'm making a comparison. In America, I don't know if they have this in any other foreign countries, but in America, when you drive into a city, they have a little thing. They have a little sign that says
population.
That says city of, or they just name. They don't even have city of. They just name the city or town or whatever, and then it says population this much. That's a census.
Correct.
The city is required. Every city in America is required to have a census.
Isn't it every 5 years they have to update it or something?
Yeah, it's required to have a census of who exactly lives there and stuff like that. They have to keep track of it, and like you said, every year they update it because city numbers probably change all the time. People move, people are born, people die, stuff like that.
Exactly.
And it's not like you're going to go there every single day or every single week and change a number on the board or something.
That's why it's in so many requirements. I think it's annually or it's triannually or something.
Exactly. So then, in the 8th century, Buddhist monks and priests, they began to interfere in politics.
Interfere?
Yep. Yeah. They began to interfere in politics.
That's a bad thing when religion takes over.
So, at this time, we are in 784 now. Japan has an emperor named Kamu. His lifespan was from 737 to 806. He decided to move the capital of Japan.
To where?
Well, in 794, he moved it to
Kyoto.
Hienkyo.
Oh, yes, Kyoto.
Hienkyo. Well, which eventually became Kyoto?
I believe so, because I did read that.
Okay, and that means capital of peace.
Yep.
Oh, and then it says later the city's name was later changed to Kyoto.
Hey, I'm so smart. No, I'm kidding.
And that remained the capital of Japan until 1868.
Yeah, it had the longest span of of the three capitals that originally.
Yep. So, do you think we have?
You got another 2 minutes.
We got 5.5 minutes. Do you think we have enough time to cover the Heian period?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, the next period basically the Kofun period is now over.
Yep.
And now we move into the Heian period in Japan.
Yep.
Now every country has a period.
Oh yeah. I think this becomes feudal period, feudal Japan.
So the Heian period was from 794 to 1185. And during that time, the arts and learning began to flourish in Japan. And then about 1000 AD, a woman named Lady Murasaki Shikibu, she wrote the world's first novel called The Tale of Gengi, which is I have
heard of that.
It's a story about the life of a prince called Gengi.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. It's almost like Genghis.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's another book from that time. It's a diary. It's written by a lady in Waning. She was her name was Sai Shinagon, and that book is called the Pillow Book.
Wow, I've heard of the first book.
I thought I heard of the Pillow Book.
I've heard of the other one.
So then, it's the beginning of the 9th century. A man named, I believe it's a man's name, don't want to be sexist here.
Okay.
A man named Dango Daishi, he founded the Tendai sect of Buddhism.
Okay.
And then a little later, a person named Kobu Daishi, he founded the Shingon sect.
The Shion?
Shingon sect, or however you pronounce that. And then, in the late 7th century, they're an aristocratic family. They were called the Fujiwara. They became very powerful.
That's kind of what brought in aristocracies in Japan.
And they had a very increasing influence on Japanese politics.
And they drew the power, started drawing it away from the emperor.
Yeah. And with that, outside Kyoto, outside, the city, outside Kyoto, the emperor's power just depleted.
And that was all because the aristocracy started taking over.
Yep. So wealthy landowners, they became increasingly powerful, and they started to have private armies. Started to employ private armies.
Yep.
Now, Japanese warriors, they're called samurai. In feudal Japan, samurai were hereditary warriors. They followed a code of behavior. This was called Bushido.
Bushido. Yeah. Oh my God, I love Bushido.
Yep.
It's called it's a code of honor in war.
Yeah. Now, these samurai, they were supposed to be completely loyal and self-disciplined. Rather than be captured by any enemy samurai, they weren't, instead of being captured, they were supposed to, unfortunately, commit suicide by disemboweling themselves.
I think it's called seppuku or...
Dear Lord.
Or harakiri.
It was called seppuku.
Yeah, and what it was is usually you were disemboweled and your best friend would take off your head.
So basically, these samurai they battled with long swords. These are called katanas. They obviously still exist today, and they also had short swords called wakizashi.
Wakizakis. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they also had spears called yari and daggers called tanta. And they also had skewers called kogai and small knives called kuzaku or kozaka. That's what it's called.
Yeah. Now,
so the main piece of armor to protect a samurai's torso, it was called a haramaki, which it had skirts called haskazuri. It was to protect the lower torso, and a samurai's helmet, it was called kabuto. And what this was it had neck guards called shikoro, which sometimes had a crest called kaijurushi.
Right in the front, right here.
Yep. The neck, it was also protected. It was also protected by a piece called the nadawa. And samurai, they also wore masks called mempo, and also wore armored sleeves called koti, or coat, to protect their arms. So eventually, in 1180, the civil war broke out between powerful families in Japan, and on one side were the Taira family. They were also called the Heike, and on the other side were the Minamoto family, which were also called the Genapi. The Minamoto were supported by the Fujiwara, and they were led by two brothers, Yoritomo and Yoshito Suni. And the Taira were finally defeated by the Minamoto in a naval battle at Danora in 1185.
And we'll end it right there.
And next week we'll do Japan Part 2, where we're going to talk about the Middle Ages.
Yay! Also the middle of the feudal Japan.
Yes.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Night.